Silent Stories brings you tales that linger whispered from the shadows of everyday life. This is the story of a man whose quiet presence hid a past so extraordinary it took a single moment of recognition to unravel a legacy of courage. Welcome to Silent Stories, where the unnoticed become unforgettable. Subscribe now and join us as we uncover the hidden heroes among us. The pre-dawn chill of Norfolk, Virginia carried the sharp bite of the Atlantic as Naval Station Norfolk's Special Operations Command training facility stirred awake. Inside the cavernous gym, fluorescent lights flickered to life, casting stark shadows across racks of barbells, weathered mats, and the faint sheen of polished steel. The air was heavy with the scent of iron, sweat, and unspoken ambition, a crucible where America's fiercest warriors were forged. Amid the clatter of weights and the cadence of disciplined breathing, Marcus "Ghost" Jackson moved like a specter, pushing a cleaning cart through the chaos. At 60, his broad shoulders and steady gait hinted at a strength that belied his faded janitor's uniform. For 18 years, he'd scrubbed floors, polished benches, and emptied bins here, invisible to the young operators who saw only a quiet black man with a mop, not the warrior who'd once carried the weight of a nation's secrets in jungles and deserts half a world away. Marcus had mastered the art of fading into the background. His eyes, sharp despite the years, stayed fixed on his work, wiping down mirrors, collecting discarded towels, sweeping grit from the rubberized floor. The gym was a proving ground for future Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, and Green Berets, and Marcus knew its rhythm better than anyone. He'd seen cocky recruits crumble under the weight of selection courses, watched quiet underdogs rise through sheer grit, their dreams and failures etched into the floors he cleaned each morning. The trainees, most in their 20s, barely registered his presence, stepping around his cart without a glance. To them, he was just the janitor, as unremarkable as the pull-up bars or the worn punching bags swaying in the corner. At 0430, the first wave of candidates filtered in, their faces taut with the strain of courses designed to break more men than they made. Marcus recognized the look, grit mixed with fear, the same he'd worn 40 years ago in a different world, under a different flag. Back then, he'd been Ghost, a Special Forces operator with the 75th Ranger Regiment, running missions buried in files marked top secret. Now he was just Marcus, the man who kept the gym spotless. His uniform hid scars from jungle ambushes, desert firefights, and a lifetime of carrying burdens no one here could imagine. A faded tattoo on his collarbone, usually concealed by his collar, told a story no one knew. A dagger wrapped in a snake, with the numbers 75th beneath, marking his time with the Elite Rangers and Task Force 160, the Night Stalkers. "Yo, old man, you missed a spot," called Petty Officer Ryan Caldwell, a 24-year-old SEAL hopeful with a smirk that screamed overconfidence. He pointed to a pristine patch of floor near the squat racks, his buddies chuckling as they adjusted their lifting belts. Marcus nodded, his face a mask of calm, and maneuvered his cart to the corner. He'd heard worse racial jabs, dismissive taunts, and learned that silence was his shield. This job kept him fed, insured, and close to the life he'd left behind, even if no one knew the battles he'd fought in Somalia, Panama, and places that existed only in classified briefings. As the gym filled with the clang of weights, the thud of medicine balls, and the shouts of instructors pushing trainees past their limits, Marcus worked on, unnoticed. His movements were precise, almost ritualistic. Polishing the steel of a bench press, scrubbing scuff marks from the floor, restocking towels with a care that spoke of discipline older than most of the men here. But trouble brewed near the deadlift platform, where Caldwell, fresh off a grueling 5-mile ocean swim, was flexing his ego as much as his muscles. "Check this out," he said loudly, slamming a 45-pound plate onto a bar. "Told this chick at the bar I'm basically a SEAL already. She was all over me, asking about missions, wanting to know what it's like to be a real operator." His crew laughed, feeding his bravado, their voices echoing off the concrete walls. Marcus, wiping down a nearby bench, overheard every word. His hands moved in slow, deliberate circles, but his jaw tightened, a flicker of something old and dangerous stirring beneath his calm exterior. Old instincts, listening, assessing, calculating, never faded, honed in places where a single misstep meant death. "Point is," Caldwell went on, tossing a careless glance toward Marcus, "you gotta be a real operator to get respect. Not some guy mopping floors who probably never left the space." A few trainees shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting to Marcus, but none spoke up. The gym's unwritten code, "Don't rock the boat," kept them silent. Marcus kept his head down, moving to a row of kettlebells, his rag tracing the curves of the iron. Caldwell, sensing no pushback, stepped closer, his voice growing bolder. "Hey, janitor, you ever even hold a rifle?" Or are you just good with a broom? The gym quieted, the clank of weights pausing as tension rippled through the air. A few trainees smirked, others looked away, but Marcus met Caldwell's eyes for a moment, his voice low but steady, carrying the rasp of someone who'd breathed too much smoke and sand. I've held a few things in my time. Bet you have, Caldwell sneered, turning to his friends for approval. What's your deal, old man? You just gonna clean up after us forever? He stepped into Marcus's path, blocking the cart, his chest puffed out with the arrogance of youth. The confrontation was seconds from escalating when a new voice cut through the gym like a gunshot. Petty Officer Caldwell, stand down. Chief Warrant Officer Daniel Hawk Torres strode in, his boots echoing on the floor. At 45, Torres was a legend, 2 silver stars, a bronze star, and a reputation for sniffing out bullshit a mile away. He'd run this gym for a decade, molding raw recruits into warriors with a blend of discipline and instinct. Torres's gaze landed on Marcus and something shifted in his expression. The janitor's collar had slipped during the confrontation, revealing the edge of that tattoo, 75th Rangers, unmistakable to anyone who knew the elite units. Holy shit, Torres muttered, stepping closer, his eyes narrowing as he processed the faded ink. A dagger, a snake, the numbers 75th. Ghost Jackson? The name hit the gym like a shockwave. Trainees froze, weights clattering to the floor. Caldwell's smirk vanished, replaced by confusion. Chief, what's going on? He stammered. Torres ignored him, his eyes locked on Marcus. You're the ghost? 75th Ranger Regiment, Task Force 160? Night Stalkers? Marcus straightened, his janitor's posture giving way to a soldier's bearing, shoulders squaring instinctively. That was a long time ago, Chief. Torres shook his head, a grin breaking through his weathered face. Bullshit it was. You're a goddamn legend. He turned to the stunned trainees, his voice carrying the weight of command. Listen up. You're standing in the presence of Staff Sergeant Marcus Ghost Jackson. 3 tours in Somalia, 2 in Panama, ops in places you'll never read about. This man's got a Distinguished Service Cross, 2 bronze stars, and a Purple Heart with clusters locked in a vault somewhere because his missions were too sensitive for public record. The gym was silent, every eye on Marcus. Caldwell's face drained of color, his bravado collapsing like a house of cards. Torres wasn't done. This man spent 18 months behind enemy lines in Mogadishu coordinating airstrikes that saved an entire platoon. He carried a wounded teammate 12 miles through a war zone with a broken leg. And you, he jabbed a finger at Caldwell, thought you could disrespect him because he's got a mop. A murmur rippled through the trainees, a mix of awe and shame. Lieutenant Sarah Nguyen, one of the gym's few female instructors, stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. My brother was in Somalia. He used to talk about a ranger called Ghost who got his unit out of a Black Hawk crash ambush. Said he was the bravest man he ever met. She looked at Marcus, eyes glistening. That was you, wasn't it? Marcus nodded, his stoic mask cracking for a moment. Your brother, was he Danny Nguyen? She swallowed hard, nodding. He passed last year. Cancer. But he never forgot you. Told me how you stayed behind to hold off militia so his squad could escape. The revelation hit like a tidal wave. Marcus wasn't just a janitor, he was a bridge to their own history, a living testament to the sacrifices that built their legacy. The gym, once a place of casual arrogance, felt sacred, the air thick with respect. Caldwell, still reeling, muttered, I didn't know, sir. Marcus's gaze softened, but his voice carried steel. You didn't know because you didn't care to look. A real warrior sees the fight in everyone, not just the ones wearing the right uniform. Torres clapped Marcus on the shoulder, his grip firm. Staff Sergeant, would you share some of what you learned out there? Not the classified stuff, just the grit that kept you alive. Marcus hesitated, glancing at his cart. For 18 years, he'd been invisible, his past buried under routine. Now, the gym was a stage, and he was being called to step into the spotlight. I can spare a few minutes, he said, setting down his mop, the gesture feeling like a reclaiming of something long lost. For 3 days, the gym transformed. During breaks, Marcus shared stories of survival. Navigating jungles with no map, outsmarting enemies with nothing but instinct, keeping his team alive when hope was a luxury. Trainees listened, rapt, as he taught them mental toughness no manual could convey, how to focus when exhaustion clawed at your mind, how to make decisions when every choice was a gamble with lives. Even instructors took notes, humbled by a man they'd overlooked for years. Marcus spoke of a night in Panama pinned down by cartel gunfire, using a broken radio to call in a helicopter extraction while dragging a wounded comrade to safety. He described the weight of leadership, the guilt of losing men, and the quiet pride of bringing others home. The trainees, even the cockiest, hung on every word, their respect growing with each story. But on the fourth morning, trouble arrived in the form of Lieutenant Commander Gregory Walsh, a desk-bound officer with a reputation for bureaucracy over bravery. Walsh stormed into the gym, clutching a manila folder, his face set in a scowl. "Jackson, my office." "Now." In a cramped administrative room smelling of stale coffee and printer ink, he laid out his case. "I've got a formal complaint you're disrupting training with unverified stories, claiming a military record that's questionable." Marcus's stomach sank. His service record was a patchwork of redactions, his missions too sensitive for public files. Walsh, sensing weakness, pressed on. "Your background check from '07 is incomplete. No decorations, no combat record. I'm recommending suspension pending a stolen valor investigation." The accusation stung like a blade. Marcus had spent his career in the shadows, his sacrifices hidden to protect national security. Now that secrecy was a noose. "Sir, I've done my job here for 18 years. Never missed a shift, never caused trouble. I never claimed anything." Walsh waved him off, his eyes cold. "Save it for the investigators. You're barred from the facility effective immediately." Marcus left the office, his cart abandoned in the gym, feeling the weight of 18 years of loyalty crumbling under bureaucratic suspicion. The next week was a blur of isolation and whispers. Marcus was confined to his small apartment, a modest space filled with mementos he rarely touched, a folded flag from a fallen teammate, a faded Ranger tab, a photo of his old unit in Mogadishu, their faces young and fierce. The gym, his sanctuary, was off limits. Trainees were warned not to discuss the matter, and Torres faced a formal reprimand for allowing unauthorized personnel to interfere with training protocols. Rumors spread like wildfire. Maybe Marcus was a fraud, a storyteller spinning tales for attention. Caldwell, torn between guilt and doubt, wrestled with his role in sparking the confrontation. Had he been fooled by a clever imposter, or had he disrespected a hero? Hope came from Lieutenant Sarangwin, who refused to let Marcus's legacy be erased. She reached out through her network, contacting a retired Ranger colonel named Evelyn Harper, who'd served with Marcus in Panama. Harper's response was immediate and fierce. "Ghost Jackson? That man pulled me out of a burning chopper under fire in '89. Question his service and you're questioning the Rangers." She provided a sworn affidavit detailing Marcus's actions during a classified operation that saved her team. But even Harper's testimony hit a wall. Marcus's records were locked behind clearances few could access, buried in vaults at the Pentagon. The crisis peaked with a certified letter delivered to Marcus's apartment. It was a cold, official document from the base, informing him that his security clearance was under review, his veterans' benefits were being scrutinized, and he faced potential prosecution under the Stolen Valor Act, a law meant to punish those who falsely claimed military honors. Sitting at his kitchen table, Marcus stared at the letter, the words blurring as memories flooded back, the heat of Mogadishu, the crack of sniper fire, the weight of a dying friend in his arms. He'd spent his life serving in silence, only to be branded a liar by the system he'd bled for. For the first time in decades, Marcus felt truly defeated, the invisible janitor erased even from his own story. Then, at 5 o'clock on a Monday, his phone rang, jolting him from restless sleep. "Staff Sergeant Jackson, this is General Amanda Brooks, Army Special Operations Command. We need to meet." Marcus's heart pounded. The commander of SOCOM didn't call retired NCOs, especially ones facing stolen valor charges. "Ma'am, I think there's been a mistake," he said, his voice hoarse. "No mistake, Sergeant. I've been following your situation through concerned colleagues. Can you be at Fort Bragg by 1300? 3 hours later, Marcus was in a staff car, wearing his only suit, a faded gray number he hadn't touched in years, clutching a folder of every document he could find. Discharge papers, a commendation letter from a long-dead CO, a photo of his Ranger tab. At Fort Bragg, he was escorted to a secure conference room where General Brooks waited with 2 others, Colonel Evelyn Harper, now gray-haired but still fierce, and Robert Klein, a civilian from the Defense Intelligence Agency. Brooks stood, offering a firm handshake. "Sergeant Jackson, thank you for coming. You've been done a grave disservice." Harper stepped forward, her smile warm but tinged with anger. "Ghost, you magnificent bastard. You haven't changed, just grayer." The reunion was brief but emotional. Harper recounted the night Marcus saved her from that burning chopper, his calm under fire a beacon in chaos. Klein opened a secure laptop, his tone all business. "Your record isn't incomplete. It's classified at the highest level. You ran 53 covert ops across 6 countries, saved over 300 lives, and were nominated for the Medal of Honor twice, but the missions were blacked out for national security. He spread documents across the table, after-action reports, commendations, a grainy photo of Marcus in fatigues, his face half hidden by night vision goggles. The gaps in your file aren't evidence of fraud, they're proof of your service's sensitivity. Brooks leaned forward, her eyes steady. And Walsh, the officer behind this? He's under investigation for leaking classified data to private contractors. His attack on you was a smokescreen to cover his own tracks. Marcus exhaled, the weight of decades lifting slightly. The irony was staggering. His greatest weakness, the secrecy of his record, was his greatest proof. Brooks stood, her voice resolute. We're flying to Norfolk tomorrow to set this right. I want you there, Sergeant. The next morning, the gym at Naval Station Norfolk was packed, trainees, instructors, and base brass summoned for an unscheduled address. Lieutenant Commander Walsh stood at the back, his face pale, sensing the collapse of his carefully constructed case. General Brooks took the podium, her presence commanding silence. We're here to correct a grave injustice, she began. Staff Sergeant Marcus "Ghost" Jackson isn't just a janitor. He's a hero whose service was hidden to protect this nation. He ran missions most of you can't imagine, saved lives you'll never know, and earned honors locked away for your safety. She gestured to Marcus, standing tall in his suit. To those who doubted him, especially those who used their rank to silence him, you've dishonored us all. Klein stepped forward, holding a small box. On behalf of the Department of Defense, I present Staff Sergeant Jackson with the Distinguished Service Cross, long overdue. As Brooks pinned the medal to Marcus's chest, the gym erupted in applause, trainees and instructors alike standing in respect. Caldwell approached, head bowed. I was wrong, sir. I'll learn to be better. Marcus clasped his shoulder. You will, son. A warrior lifts others up, always. The gym never forgot Marcus "Ghost" Jackson. His mop was retired, replaced by a new role, mentoring trainees, sharing lessons no course could teach. The facility's walls, once marked by sweat and grit, now bore a small plaque in honor of Staff Sergeant Marcus Jackson, whose silent valor reminds us all, heroes walk among us, unseen but never forgotten.